Welcome to Live Vedanta, a podcast about simple living and high thinking. Each week, we join Vivek Gupta, the resident guide of Chinmaya Mission Niagara, as he brings insights about the divine into the daily. We're currently in our season, Stairway to Serenity, unpacking the 100 words that are at the heart of Hinduism. So what are we exploring this week? Well, sometimes we wonder, if we're living so fast, what are we actually chasing after? If joy was where we thought it was, shouldn't the chase have ended already? How can we let go of our past, drop our nagging sense of incompleteness, and rise above the demands of our senses to finally rest? Let's hear from Vivekji on how to go from chasing to embracing in this episode of Stairway to Serenity.
Hari Om, and greetings from Niagara Falls. I joined our ashram when I was 24 years old. And I started to try to share what I learned in the ashram when I was 26. So only a few years ago. When I started sharing, I was a young adult. And so I naturally invested a lot in our young adults, our Chinmaya Yuva Kendra. Now, as I've aged, my investment has naturally shifted to our evolving adults, our Chinmaya Setukaris. And that culture in America is quite vibrant right now. We have all sorts of events and movements and development. Yet, our young adults are still in my radar. In fact, after today's class, I have a meeting to rejuvenate chick culture in America. So a group of us are meeting on what we can do about that. As part of this effort, I've been writing a message in our e-newsletter that goes to all of our chicks every month. Do you all remember when I read that message about self-care? I think a lot of you liked that. I'm going to read to you the January message. This month is almost over. Do you remember the resolutions you made for January 1? How are those going? 4 weeks later. Here's that message. Time is a continuous flow. Yet in time, each one of us can renew ourselves. Thus, New Year arrives only when you renew yourself. Swami Chinmayananda. Around the world, seekers of all backgrounds are celebrating a new year. For many, this means making new resolutions like exercising more and eating less. With the adrenaline of a new year, most are temporarily able to achieve such goals. But what differentiates those who succeed in the long term? More often than not, the secret ingredient for sustaining long-term habits is vision, or the inspiring why behind the what. By inquiring into the fundamental reasons for our goals, we find the inspiration to pursue long-term changes instead of short-term fixes. This shift in focus to the sustainable manifests itself as small changes in our daily routines. In knowing what we deeply need, we will invoke the clarity needed for steadiness. For the month of January, let us practice identifying the intention behind any resolutions we have. Through this commitment to intention, we will undoubtedly find the steadiness needed to succeed in our aspirations. Joyous, renew year to all. Does this message relate to you? Our course is not a hack. A hack is a short-term strategy that only lasts for the short term. Our course is a reflection. The entire 32 weeks, the entire Mokshapata is for us to reflect, because whatever you reflect on, you will become. The portion of the Mokshapata that we're flowing through right now is our sheets or koshas. Headspace 43 was prana. Prana means to input. What we have to reflect on is whatever we input, we are going to output also. If I input garbage, I'm going to output garbage. Very technically, suppose all of us eat a banana. The tamasic, or the grossest part of that banana, this system will reject. We will defecate that. The rajasic part, which is more of the subtle part, that becomes this body. The saying "you are what you eat" is quite factual. And the sattvic part, that is the causal part of this banana, it's not defecated, it doesn't become the body, it becomes the mind. So again, if I'm careless with what I input, I'm going to be careless with what I output. How to practice this headspace? Practice being healthy. If you're healthy, you can follow your responsibility. But think, if you're unhealthy, how can you give to that responsibility? Conversely, one becomes more of a liability then. Headspace 44, manaha, or mind. Acharya Shankara defines the mind's nature as samshaya atmika, that which is the source of doubts. What do you doubt the most? Share with me in the chat what you doubt the most. Vaccines, climate change, the Mokshapata, yourself. You doubt yourself the most, and you may not identify with this doubting, but here's how it plays out. When you doubt yourself, you become distracted. When you're distracted, you start to compare. For those who do not doubt themselves, they feel that they're worth it. So they're not distracted and they don't compare. A way to slow down self-doubt is through japa. When I engage in meaningful repetition, what happens is I raise the quality of my thoughts, which triggers a reduction in the quantity of my thoughts, which triggers a redirection of the flow of my thoughts. Raise, reduce, redirect. All you have to do is raise the quality of your thoughts. And if we layer this onto the sheets, when I redirect the flow of my thoughts, they become aligned with my intellect. That is when Prince Arjuna starts to listen to Bhagavan Krishna. Headspace 45 is buddhi. Buddhi means intellect. the most useful way to use the intellect is to have an ideal in one's life, in one's decade, in one's year, and on and on and on. When one lives for one's individuality and family, then one's ideal is a person. The evolution of this is when one lives for the community and society. Then one's ideal has evolved from being a person to a purpose. And when one lives for humanity and divinity, what is the difference with divinity? You include animals and plants and stones. Then one's ideal is not a person nor even a purpose. It is presence. The presence that is divine that flows through every being. You should check your intellect. You should check your ideal. Today, where did your resources, time, and effort go? And that will show you if your ideal is ordinary, if your ideal is great, or if your ideal is the greatest. And sharing a couple of more insights into this. What is the lubricant in all of these ideals is independence. The more attached one is, naturally one's ideal is going to be more limited. The more independent one is, naturally one's ideal is going to be more visionary. And in my experience, it is a master whose ideal is higher that can really make this real for us. For those without an ideal, living a life, an ordinary life, is really being a papi. You have all of this potential, and what are you doing with it? Wasting it. Then what happens is, maranda, whenever any negativity happens to you, you just can't let it go. That will stay with you until you die. We continue. Headspace 46, 43, 44, 45 complete. 46 is chitta or memory. Chitta in Sanskrit, memory in English. I've repeatedly shared that part of the training in this course is to learn how to reflect. So to really emphasize this, I'm going to read to you what has been written about chitta. Don't write, only reflect. Chitta. That's part of the Mokshapata. The pointer, memory. The phrase, collection of past experiences. The paragraph. Chitta is thoughts of the past used as references for the intellect to make decisions in the present. Knowing the function of chitta, instead of dwelling on regrets of the past, we can learn from our mistakes to make less mistakes. And here is the picture. Can you all see that seeker carrying emotional baggage? Sad face, happy face. Some of you may know This past Saturday, I started my training in Hindu chaplaincy. And one of the classes I'm taking is called Hindu Spiritual Care. And our facilitator was sharing that you have to listen to people's faces. Whenever we think of listening, it's always in reference to audio, correct? I'm speaking, you're pretending to listen. But to listen to one's face. One's face is almost like the why. And then what comes from that why is the how. And for those who are students of Bhagavad Gita, more important than the how or the what is the why. If you want to care for others more, you have to reflect more. Coming back specifically to chitta, the way we live our lives, an experience first comes to the mind. The mind then passes this experience on to the memory so that there is a reference. We've already had an experience like this. Then that gets passed on to the intellect to make a decision. The present experience in reference to a past experience, now the intellect has to make a decision. What do we do with this? And who is ever present in this system? The ego. The mind, memory, intellect, ego make up our antakarana, or inner doer. Now, the implication of this, the mind has an experience and passes it on to the memory. If your memory is filled with regrets, that is being processed by the intellect. What kind of decision do you think the intellect is going to make about the present experience if it keeps on being fed with regrets? Tell me, how does your day feel? How does an hour feel if in that day, an hour, there are regrets that keep on coming and fueling you? You're negative, you're exhausted, you're afraid, you're wrong, you're rattled. Exactly. So what are we supposed to do with this propensity for regret? Learn. Learn from your past so that when the mind passes it on to the memory, that memory is not tainting that experience. That experience is fresh then. I have found the best way to convert a regret into a lesson is to accept who you are. When you accept who you are, you accept what happens to you. And when you accept what happens to you, you will find that others will accept who you are more. We use this word acceptance quite lightly. This is an evolutionary virtue. Accept who you are, because who made you? You're all thinking AC/DC, who made who? Bhagwan made you, and you are perfect. You just don't know that. And knowledge helps you to remember that. Headspace 47, ahankara. Ahankara. In English, identification. Identification. How? How does this play out? Another word for ahankara is ego. The ego serves no function in our lives other than to identify. Identify with what? The intellect, mind, breath, and body. The ego bosses these equipments around. And what do these equipments do? They create experiences. That is why the ego, the etymology of ahankara is aham karomi iti ahankara. Aham means I, karomi means does. What does the ahankara or ego always project? I did, I'm doing, I will do. In our Seeker's Word Book, how many of you are using this right now? Can you show me? Okay. Are you looking at the picture? What is that a picture of? Share in the chat. What is that a picture of? A bleeding hand, sure. Sweat, sure. What is that entity that is on that human? It is a leech. A leech. That's what the ego is. It just latches on like a leech and feeds on these equipments. I like not to make mistakes with the etymology of Sanskrit words. So today I was reflecting on ahankara, and I sort of know what the etymology is, but I wanted to verify that. Typically, I use a computer that is so vintage that Wikipedia won't even load on this computer. Can you believe that? Wikipedia is like the most universal website, but it won't load on my computer. So when I search for this, Destinypedia came up. Have you all heard of Destinypedia? Okay, I'm not encouraging you to use Destinypedia. It's more of like this gaming fantasy world site. But ahankara is on there. And so I wanted to read to you some of the references to ahankara. The goal of ahankara: to prey upon and gain power through granting wishes to other beings. Average height, variable, meaning all of you. Average weight, variable, meaning all of you. Distinctions, shape-shifting abilities. Average lifespan, indefinite. How did they know that ignorance is timeless? Other names, dragon. It's amazing how accurate this is. The ego starts with separation. Only upon separation is there identification. If there's no separation, there is no identification. And the way for us to think about this is just a sense. It's a sense of separation. See, all of you do not feel a sense of separation with your body. Agreed? You also don't feel a sense of separation with your own home or wherever you're living. But if another person came and just rubbed their hand against your hand by accident, there's such a sense of separation. Your hand, my hand. And this sense of separation is almost growing for us, because if you observe infants or children, they don't have this sense of separation. It becomes stronger and stronger and stronger with us, correct? Especially in America in terms of personal space. In Bharat, personal space is non-existent. We call it asat. In America, there is personal space. We call that sat. So what are we supposed to do about this? What is our reflection to not succumb to this identification? Observe. identify less by sensing the sense of separation less, and that happens through observing more. When you observe more, you will dismantle this sense of separation. And so what happens then is there's less identification. Now you're going to ask me, Vivekji, tell us, how can we practice observing more? In my experience, the catalyst to learn to zoom out, which is observing, you start by zooming in, which is focusing. Those who are focused, they naturally become more observant. And so that ego does not have a grip on them. Zoom out. How? Zoom in. I'll give you one gauge to know if you're focused or not. Do you all like these gauges? I think so. Otherwise, sometimes we get lost in the poetry, that which is abstract. If you need to be followed up with, then that shows a lack of focus. If you need to be followed up with. Those who are focused don't need to be followed up with. Imagine we were all together and we were going for a hike. And suppose one of you fell, so I was lifting you up and there was another person there and I said, please remind me about, we have to do this when we go back, or I have to call this person. And when we go back to, let's say, the ashram or to our home, and I have to remind you, can you remind me what I told you to remind me about? See, that's your lack of focus then, correct? I couldn't write it down in the moment because I was engaged. Why should I have to remind you? Why did I even tell you to remind me? Focus. It is the practice of focus where we feel successful in a certain experience that will be a catalyst for us to focus more. Let me say that again with less big words. If you try, you will feel good. When you feel good, you will try more. It is your own success that has to be an inspiration for you. I keep saying my experience because I'm telling you I'm trying this and it's working. So now I'm telling you to try too. One more headspace. 48. Indriya. In English, senses, as in hearing and touching and seeing and so on. What is the primary occupation of our senses? What is the primary occupation of our senses? Look at you, Vedantic scholars, inputting, engaging in objects. Here I have one real answer. Extroversion, eating. What we do with our senses is we try to find joy. That's what we do with our senses. We try to find joy. And our scriptures are quite beautiful in this sense. Name a sura or deva who's never satisfied. Always insecure and causing trouble. Indra, exactly. So whenever you hear or read this word indriya, you should think of Indra. What is Indra trying to do? He's always trying to find joy. It was Indra who tricked Devi Ahalya, etc., etc., etc. I was listening to Pujya Swami Tejomayananda share recently about Vishaya, Mriga, Trishna, which means a deer who succumbs to a mirage. Visualize a deer that is dying of thirst and keeps chasing this mirage water, let's say in a field or on a road. And what ends up happening to that deer? It dies because there's no water there. That's not us. Vishaya means sense objects. All of us keep succumbing to this hallucination that a sense object is going to bring us joy. I've talked about this in so many corporate ways. Do you all know about the restaurant Bonefish Grill? Some of you put a hand up. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm not just making this up, correct? Okay, good. And the logo for Bonefish Grill, not that I've ever been there, but I've traveled a lot through the States. It's the skeleton of a fish. And the slogan is, happiness lives here. Seems quite backwards to me, but that's what people think. If I eat this fish and what remains is the bones, I will be happy. Those who succumb to this mirage live quite inefficiently. Because the more you engage your senses and they create a sensation, the more there's a thirst for that. But whatever you gave those senses, it needs more and more and more of that for that same high. Agreed? Like an alcoholic, like a drug addict, they need more alcohol. They need more narcotics for them to feel that high. That is an inefficient way to use one's senses. So what should we do? Direct your senses. You be the director of this part of who you are. When you start to direct the senses, you will feel a relative freedom. Small examples. If someone is being rude to you while you're driving and you don't be rude back to them, don't you feel more free? When there's a potential argument, but you don't say anything, don't you feel free? When you don't overeat, don't overwatch, don't overlisten, don't overtouch, don't oversmell, etc., don't you feel free? And one more practice relating to this. A very practical way to direct our senses is don't associate with that which is going to control your senses. Don't associate with that which is going to control your senses. I am a sugar addict. You can give me any amount of sugar and I will consume it. And recently, I was sharing with Sheila to not bring chocolate into our home, to not bring cookies into our home. And we've sort of run out because I ate all of it. The sacrifice I make for this family. So I ate all of it. And now we don't have any left, but there's no craving now, is my point. It's not there, so I don't think about it. That's a very practical way to direct my senses and to feel relatively free. I was going to cover Headspace 49. It is upadi, in English, tool. Can you point to me your upadis? Everything. And if you don't know their tools, then what are you?
If you enjoyed what you heard or want to learn more, share this episode with a friend or find us online at facebook.com/cmniagara. For those on the journey of self-development, Chinmaya Mission Niagara provides a community forum for seekers to listen, reflect, and contemplate. This podcast is produced by the young adults of Chinmaya Mission, an international nonprofit working to transform individuals through the knowledge of Vedanta. Until next time, inspire, love, be.